So today I wanted to talk about the comic book kind of structure in Marvel's Avengers. I know this isn't necessarily something new, but I do want to talk about actually specifically there are certain comic books that can give you an armor boost that I really want to point out because it is just such an incredibly big deal. It'll help you so much with the raid and the OLT to where you don't even really have to focus on your own defense at all almost, and you can be able to just run through the raid and the OLT with borderline ease. So if you enjoyed this video today, feel free to like and subscribe for future Marvel content. So first of all, I just want to explain very briefly how comic books work in Marvel's Avengers for those of you who might not know. So you randomly collect comics as you go along, right? And you can collect the entire sets or whatever. But if you actually look at what the comic book is, each comic book gives you a different passive buff, right? So right now we're looking at Thor 2007. It gives us a max 1% willpower bonus. And you can see right there it has a collection tier bonus as well. So there's tier 1. I think the highest tier will be tier 5. But basically the more you collect of this same exact comic, the more the passive boost you get in the background is. So you want to obviously try to get some specific comics to the next tiers and stuff. So now that's just how the comics work in general. You can get different tiers to get higher passive bonuses in the background. So now specifically the comics that I want to talk about, there are 4 different comics. So the first one is right here, Avengers 1964. As you can see, it gives you a 12% armor stat bonus. So it gives you a 12% armor stat bonus. And then the same thing goes for Hawkeye. So right now I have Hawkeye's at 11% because it's only tier 2. The 12% is from tier 3 for the Avengers one. So the Hawkeye 2012 to 2015 gives you an armor bonus. Now there is a Black Panther one. Truth be told, there is a Black Panther one, but it's literally the one Black Panther one that I don't have. I've been getting unlucky, but this Black Panther one that I don't have also gives you an armor bonus. And then a Spider-Man one gives you an armor bonus. The Ultimate Spider-Man number 3, 2000 gives you an armor bonus. Now the reason why this is so important is you want to get these comics to tier 2 because the tier 1 of the comics is only a 1% armor bonus. It's only a 1%. But once you get that comic to tier 2, the boost goes from 1% to 11% armor. And I cannot stress enough how big of a difference that makes. Like I said, the only one I don't have is Black Panther, but I want you to take a look. So right now my defense with Spider-Man is 1970, and that is with me having gear on that does not focus on defense at all. It basically almost does not focus on defense at all. Let me take a look at some other characters that I have right now. So obviously now this is my Thor. My Thor's defense is 2518. Now let me stress something to you. This is the same exact build that I've been running for my Thor personally for the OLT. It's nothing necessarily too special, or I should say, besides this right here. I usually have this Valor piece on. So besides that, right, this is the exact build that I've been running for the OLT and the raid with my Thor. And before I had the Hawkeye comic and the Spider-Man comic, before I even had those comics with the armor boost, this exact build, no change in gear whatsoever, this exact build had a defense of 1700. Okay, so I cannot stress enough that purely off of the boost of the Hawkeye and the Spider-Man comics getting to tier 2, purely off of those boosts, my Thor's defense went from 1700 to 2500. That is a humongous difference, and I cannot stress enough that when you're upgrading your defense as well, you always want to go for resilience, in my personal opinion, because resolve will also upgrade your defense, but resilience, having the armor, is what's going to make you actually take less defense. Less damage, which thankfully is what the comic boost does. It just gives you straight armor boost. So it's going to be in the Avengers set. You're going to want to get this Avengers 1964 comic, which is 12%. This Hawkeye comic, which I currently have at 11%. So like I said, so this is tier 2. As you can see from the Avengers one, I currently have it at tier 3, which is why it's a 12% boost. Tier 1 is 1%, tier 2 is 11%, tier 3 is 12%, and it keeps on increasing little by little. The main thing you want to make sure you do is you want to get from tier 1 to tier 2. That is going to be the biggest difference. Now, I will talk about real quick where to get these comics specifically, because for the most part, farming comics is a very, very random process. So in a general sense, the best way that you're going to want to do to farm a comic is you're going to want to throw on any of these minor artifacts if you have them. So 5% increased chance to find comic books in strong boxes, because each strong box has like a very small chance to drop a comic, with DNA chests having a 100% chance to give you a comic. I will say I believe golden strong boxes have a very good chance to give you one as well, but anything below golden, the chance is kind of really slim from what I've seen. But you want to equip a minor artifact that gives you an increased chance to find a comic book in a strong box. And then what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to go into any vault of your choosing, and you want to just run through all the chests, including the DNA chests. Do not forget the DNA chests, because the DNA chests are what going to give you a guaranteed comic. And so what this chance actually does sometimes as well is there's a chance that the passive, so let's say I go get a golden strong box, right? So there's a chance the passive comic book chance activates, so I get a comic book naturally from the golden strong box, and then the minor artifact boost activates as well. So I can actually get 2 comic books from one golden strong box. It is possible, and I've done it before. It works the same with the DNA chests as well. So you want to just go through a vault, and you want to make sure you run through every single chest, including the DNA chests. And then once you get all the chests above ground, just go back to the Quinjet and repeat. It's very similar to trying to get your power level up, except you're just trying to do it to get the comics. And then, so what the only thing about that though is when you do that, it's going to give you random comics. It's going to give you a good amount of comics, but all of the comics that you get are going to be very random. So for Hawkeye and Spider-Man specifically, what I suggest is use all of the DNA keys you have. If you really need to do this right now, use all of the DNA keys you have and just do that method to get as many comics as possible, and then take a look as to where your Spider-Man and your Hawkeye / Black Panther comics are at, or Avengers if you don't have that yet, and see how many more you need to get to the second tier. So for Hawkeye, if you need to get to the second tier still, it's going to take a little bit longer, but you can actually do Hawkeye's personal harm room training, and each time you complete it, it gives you a Hawkeye comic. It's a random Hawkeye comic, but it does give you a Hawkeye comic. So that's what I actually had to do to get my Hawkeye number 11 to tier 2, is I was farming the Hawkeye personal harm training room. Spider-Man, I did test it out very briefly. I was actually lucky enough to get to tier 2 just by doing the vault method for this comic. But for Spider-Man, I did find that it looks like you can get Spider-Man comics just from doing his personal harm room. Now, the reason why I say it looks like is because, unfortunately, as you can see from Black Panther, I don't have his comic yet. Well, that's because I don't know if Black Panther's personal harm room is glitched right now, but you just get a random comic, period, from Black Panthers. You don't necessarily get a specific Black Panther comic. It is just a random comic. So that's why this Black Panther one has been a lot harder for me to get. But you can get a Hawkeye comic specifically from Hawkeye's personal harm room, and Spider-Man's from his personal harm room. But that about wraps up all I have to say about this. Again, like, I cannot stress enough. I'm just going to go through some of my characters so you can see some of their builds aren't even all that. But the fact that I have the armor defense boost now is just absolutely, it's just insane how much the defense really helps. I mean, just look at that. Like some of these builds, like Iron Man's build, my defense was like high 14s before the armor boost, and now it's at 22. So I cannot stress enough just how much these boosts help. They really do. But that about wraps up what I have to say in this video. So if you enjoyed this video today, feel free to like and subscribe for future Marvel content, and I appreciate you for watching this video.